Welcome to mrhorrortale, where we tell scary stories that really happened. To ensure you don't miss out on other horror contents, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. The internet is a very significant part of our daily lives nowadays. There's simply no denying it. However, despite it being such a prominent, commonly used tool, many people ignore the darkness it can hold just below the surface. This collection of stories beckons you to traverse the realms of the dark web, where glimpses of the more twisted side of humanity echo through the freedom the anonymity of this digital realm provides. From the most unsettling revelations hidden within lines of code, to discoveries that go beyond the expected evils of the internet, these stories will make you tread carefully next time you decide to delve into the deeper side of the World Wide Web. Without further ado, let's begin. Story 1. I've worked as an investigative journalist for the past 8 years. My job's always been risky. I've published several articles and reports on criminal operations that pose a threat to the security of our country, and often dug into all sorts of cover-ups or potential criminal activity. It's the sort of profession that requires you to be extremely careful in order to protect yourself and avoid putting your loved ones in immediate danger. The dark web is a tool, just like anything else. In my field of work, it becomes extremely useful, as plenty of illegal operations are anonymously conducted through it. If you manage to find some low-profile criminal not being careful enough, or have some loose strings that still don't quite seem to connect, diving into the dark web can often provide you with the answers you're looking for. However, once you're in, you always have to keep in mind, you're just as exposed as the people you're trying to uncover. I guess I got too cocky this time. Now my family is in danger, and I don't know what to do. It all began around 3 months ago, when I started following a narcotic operative conducted by the police. They'd discovered the location of a drug dealer's base of operations, done a crackdown, confiscated several kilograms of cocaine, and arrested a few people. Pretty standard, to be honest, and perfect for an easy, short article to quickly write and sell to media outlets. Therefore, I got right into it, asking questions and trying to figure out how the police had managed to pinpoint the location of the dealer's place. They told me what they knew, and it turns out they'd found an informant in a dark web forum. That was exactly what I needed. I quickly booted my VPN and opened Tor, and went straight to the forum the officer had mentioned. It was one of those forums that wipe themselves weekly, but fortunately I had found it on time. I directly contacted the original poster, trying to see what info I could get out from him. He began getting a bit reluctant at first, but when I told him that the group he tipped on had been arrested, and that I was just a journalist trying to write a story out of it, he relaxed a bit and began talking more. He told me he'd found the group through a friend of his that turns out was heavily involved with them, and had recently opened a restaurant as a cover-up. I tried to get him to tell me what restaurant it was, but he was too scared to give many details. He said that the group the police had caught were simply a small division of the huge operation they run through the city. This would be no small story after all. Right before he left, he mentioned one last thing that left me really tense. He said he'd decided to rat them out because they were moving to darker operations than drug dealing. He said they were looking to begin venturing in human meat trafficking. After saying this, he left the forum, and I couldn't get to him again. It was the first time I'd ever run into something like that. I'd heard rumors about human trafficking operations to fulfill demands of human meat, but I always thought they were just that, rumors. I couldn't believe such a thing was actually happening in this country. I had my doubts at first, and wasn't sure how much I could trust this piece of info, especially because in the police reports I'd been allowed to read they hadn't found anything that would suggest such a grim operation. However, what this person described seemed like a highly organized network of criminals. I guessed they wouldn't leave loose ends like that around. I began researching into recently opened restaurant chains in the city, trying to find out if there might be something off about them. I must have looked into 200 different newly opened businesses, but wasn't able to pinpoint anything that would seem out of the ordinary. Whoever these people were, they were being very careful, somewhat frustrated, but with a renewed desire to bring this group's disturbing deeds into light. I went to bed. The next day, I decided the next best step was to let the police know what I found out, to try and see if they could go look into some restaurant businesses. After talking with the captain, I went straight into the dark web again to see what else I could find. I went deep this time, into the very distasteful, despair-inducing corners, to try and find any leads that would point to human meat trafficking in the city. After scrolling through countless gory, disturbing videos of humans being butchered by people in masks and all sorts of illegal operations, I came across this unsettlingly cheerful website. The page had been designed to resemble a fast food restaurant website and had a happy clown similar to the McDonald's mascot in the logo, holding a butcher's knife. As soon as I began scrolling to their menu, my blood ran cold. There were no food items listed there, just people. Photos of people in their everyday lives, along with their height, location, gender, and race, and next to each a button labeled order. I scrolled briefly through the page, horrified, and suddenly stopped, shocked to my core. I'd come across a picture of my daughter walking home from school. Her name, location, height. Everything was deadly accurate. Right under it was my wife, and after her, it was me. Worst of all, though, was that we had no order buttons next to us. Instead, there was just a line that said, "Order in progress." I immediately fled the country, taking my family with me. I warned the police about the page and told them about the immediate danger we were in. They just said they'd try their best to stop them before anything could happen to us. But once out of the country, the situation was completely out of their hands. I can barely sleep anymore. No one has come for us yet, but I know they're watching. I checked the webpage again a few nights ago, and our location has been updated, completely accurate this time too. They still read, "Order in progress." Story 2. I was really into creepypastas when I was younger. If you don't know what creepypastas are, they're basically these horror stories that would be written by someone on a forum or on a webpage, and they'd go really viral and spread across the internet, taking on a status of almost an urban legend. You've probably heard about Slenderman, or the Rake, which became some of the most well-known ones. Anyways, I really used to love them, and that led me to scour all over the internet to find new, creepier ones. Even though I first began in places like YouTube, the rabbit hole eventually took me to Reddit and even 4chan, where users can post anything they want anonymously. And well, it leads to several disturbing things to emerge from there. I blew through the popular ones really fast, and eventually I found myself reading some really obscure ones of questionable quality. Me being the kid though, I was just happy to keep on finding creepy stories on the internet to tell my friends all about. As I kept on looking for better ones, at some point I came across this really interesting post on 4chan. In it, the user described a website in which the most haunting, terrifying stories could be found. So much so, in fact, that the website wasn't even allowed to be in the regular World Wide Web, but rather had to be accessed through the dark web. He then provided the address, cursed with knowledge onion. I didn't really know what the dark web was, and since I used my dad's laptop for my internet needs, I was scared of just trying to access it without knowing what I was doing. Therefore, I decided to approach my best friend from the neighborhood, an older kid that was computer savvy. I told him what I'd found on the internet about this dark website, and he told me he could help me access the dark web from his computer at home. Excited, I agreed to go straight to his place after school. So, there we were, sitting in front of his computer as he booted it up, turned on a VPN, and opened Tor. This kid clearly knew what he was doing, and he opened my eyes to a whole other part of the internet I hadn't even heard of before. Anyways, after explaining a bit to me what the dark web was and how it worked, He wrote the address I'd given him into the search bar, and off we went. Cursed with Knowledge Onion looked extremely similar to all the other creepypasta websites I visited before. In fact, it had most of the popular stories in it too. A little disappointed, we began to browse around, trying to figure out it had something that'd be worth all this hassle in the end. We soon discovered that website had indeed stories that I'd never read before, but they definitely weren't widely available for a reason. They were either extremely graphic and gory with a disturbing amount of detail, or just really fucked up, not in the scary, spooky way, but in the way that makes you sure that something's seriously wrong with the person that wrote them. Some even included these horrible images that I'd rather not describe, but they were definitely not something that kids our age should have ever been exposed to. Disgusted and quite shaken, we closed the browser and decided to go do something else. Days went by, and the website wouldn't leave my head. It wasn't just the impact of what we'd seen there, though. There was something else drawing me to it. I couldn't get it out of my head, and eventually I just knew I had to check it out a second time. I tried persuading my friend to visit it once again, but he wanted nothing to do with it anymore. He said there was something that felt really bad about the page, and that I shouldn't check it anymore. I was having none of it. With what my friend had explained to me and some additional research, I managed to download Tor and set up a free VPN on my dad's laptop. Once done, I wrote the address on the navigation bar and was back again on the site. It didn't look any different from what I'd seen a couple of weeks ago. I began browsing around, checking the section labeled as Most Read. I looked through, and besides the aforementioned well-known creepypastas, there was one I'd never heard of, simply titled, The Classic Horror Story. Intrigued, I clicked on it. I began reading, and was slightly taken aback. Not only was the format of the story written in verse instead of prose, but the character of the story had my same name. Intrigued, I kept on reading, and slowly, realization dawned onto me. This was about me. It described me in detail, stated my address clearly, and talked about the way I'd stumbled upon the page. My stomach lurched violently, and I began getting a really bad feeling. There were just a couple more lines left, so I continued on. I still have the words burnt in my brain. The story ended with, It's the classic horror story. Kid who just won't listen. Friends who fill with worry, and suddenly go missing. But what's they use of a friend? If their warnings go ignored, they grimly meet their end. Is this the story you were looking for? Horrified, I closed the tab immediately, deleted Tor, the VPN, everything, and turned it off. I called my friend's house immediately, and his mom answered. I asked about him, and she told me he wasn't back home from school yet, and that she thought he might be hanging out with me. Only then, the impact of what I'd done really struck me. They found my friend eventually, around a week later. He'd somehow ended up in the nearby river and drowned. No other clues were found. From then on, I avoid anything horror-related, and especially anything that lurks in the dark web. I still struggle with the guilt sometimes. Story 3. I used to be a lost media YouTuber. In case you've never heard of the term, I'm basically someone who talks in their channel about pieces of media, be it TV shows, movies, games, books, online stories, or videos that have become lost through time. Lost can be many things. They could have been recalled by the studio that made them, censored, gone out of print, taken down by its creator, or simply faded into obscurity with the passage of time. My job basically consisted of finding out what they were, talking about where they came from, and what made them lost in the first place, and if I was very lucky, hopefully find a way to make it available for my audience. I found it to be a very interesting subject, and it honestly goes so deep that you'll never run the risk of having no more content. My channel was still in its growing stages, therefore I was still fairly new in the sort of things that can come attached to this sort of content. I wish I would have never gotten into it. Knowing what I'd run into, I would have never started in the first place. Some things, are lost for a reason. If you're into internet horror, you've probably heard about Jeff the Killer. It's this really bad, incredibly popular creepypasta about this kid that becomes a killer. Now, if you know about it, you've also probably seen the popular image that comes associated with it. This completely white face, devoid of any features besides its sunken, round eyes and its unsettlingly large mouth with red lips and prominent teeth, curved in a grotesque smile. That image, as it turns out, is lost media. It was pointed out to me several months ago from one of my followers. I was amazed at my own ignorance. How could such a popular image among the horror community not have a clear known origin? It was absolutely perfect material for a new video. Therefore, I got straight to work. Soon I realized the task wouldn't be easy at all. I went directly to my reliable sources, Lost Media wikis and fan forums, the Lost Media Reddit and 4chan communities, and even talked directly with some other creators I've come to know through my channel. Turns out, the image has been lost for quite some time already, and no one has been able to determine its exact origin up until now. It's a very hotly debated topic, and while many claim it first originated on Japanese media sharing websites or from a screenshot from a livestream website, no one is 100% sure, nor can they provide definite proof. That only served to further fuel my interest. I was determined to be the one who found where the image was from. Several weeks of research followed. I went into all the still available websites people claimed the image was originally from. Several were by now completely offline, and the ones that I managed to get into with the use of a VPN were completely in Japanese, which made navigating through them especially difficult. I even used this feature that allows you see websites as how they used to be several years ago, but still, the search was leading me nowhere. Almost a month had gone by already, and I had wasted all this time trying to find out the origin of the photo instead of preparing material for new videos. So my channel was becoming stagnant. I was ready to drop it and move on, until I finally came across something interesting. A user in one of these Japanese sites had shared a link along with the image. I'm not gonna write it here. I refuse to be responsible for anyone else visiting it. However, it ended in onion, which could only mean one thing. It led to the dark web. I went into Tor and pasted the link into the navigation bar. It took me straight into what seemed like another anonymous image sharing forum. The link that had been provided was straight to a specific post with the Jeff the Killer image. It wasn't the typical image everyone's so familiar with, though. No, this was a fully body picture of the person, sprawled in a room with very low light. Their arms and legs were bleeding all over. They'd been cut completely open. Disturbed, I scrolled down immediately and read the text the poster had included with the image. It only read, female, 16, 165. I closed the post and began scrolling through the website. The forum, it was completely filled with very similar images. People with their arms and legs completely cut open, sprawled in different places, and with the grotesque Jeff the Killer face edited over their real faces, followed by gender and numbers that I can just guess were age and height. Deeply horrified, I closed the website after checking a few posts. And that was that. I never researched the topic again. I thought it was over. I thought I'd just ran into those fucked up sites from the dark web. And not much else. I was wrong. I was already working on a completely unrelated video when I found something strange in my mailbox. A letter addressed to me directly, with my full name and address. No sender's info, though. I opened it and only found a folded piece of paper that said, "We're waiting for your contribution." Down at the bottom of the page, there was a small disclaimer that read, "By visiting our online community and enjoying our content, you've compromised yourself to further contribute to our repertoire of photographic depictions of the sacred art of our community. We await for your contribution in the coming days, else actions will be taken against you." Followed by it were the exact model of my laptop and the time I'd accessed the page on. That was 2 weeks ago. I've been getting the same letter every day, warning me the time for my contribution is slowly running out. I contacted the police, but they told me they haven't managed to track where the letters are coming from. They offered me protection in the form of constant surveillance to my house, but the letter that came the next day warned me to keep the police uninvolved, or my family would pay the consequences. I don't know what to believe anymore. The time for my contribution is running out tomorrow. I plan on running away. I hope they don't manage to find me. Thanks for watching. If you like the stories, remember to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any other true disturbing stories. See you next video.